Remember when I was sitting in this dark, big office where everyone had left and literally saw the work of the last 7 years fall apart in front of me. I swore to myself, if I have the chance to do this again, I will do this as a culture first business.
And how did you manage to don't lose hope during the time? Because new competitor,
Yeah.
30 people leaving, struggles with finance.
It was very tough. I do remember it was very, very difficult moments in my life. One big highlight at that time was the birth of my daughter, who is also sitting here in the studio room with me. She was born during the time, and I came home and I saw her and could cuddle with her, and she was smiling and didn't know anything about what was going on behind the scenes, and that really helped me, I think, to have some sunshine in my life during that time.
Talked a lot about culture. You told me how important it is. So tell me, what kind of a role does culture plays in your company?
I always say, culture is values times behavior, or you can say culture is what people do when no one is looking. So it's basically the idea, people take thousands of micro decisions every day, how they behave according to the values. The values are normally this abstract thing that you have next to the ping pong table, but it doesn't mean anything. Therefore, you need to operationalize them. And that allowed us, I think, to create a machine that really helped us to scale from that then 10 people up to the 200 people when we eventually then sold the business.
Do you think the acquisition was the peak of your career?
I think that would be sad, because it's a bit like saying that whenever Rafa Nadal hands in or retires from tennis, that would be the peak of his career, when he hands in the tennis racket. I think the peak of the career is when you operate well.
Welcome to a new episode of the Once Upon a Student, a place where we uncover the untold stories of extraordinary individuals. Our guest today is Bernhard Niesner, a name many will recognize as the co-founder and former CEO of Busuu, one of the world's most known language learning platforms with over 120 million users. And under his leadership, Busuu became a global success story, culminating in one of the most impressive company exits in Austrian history, 385 million euros. But let's be real, what most people don't see are the years Bernhard spent building from scratch, the sleepless night, the near bankruptcies, and the moments when it felt like the dream was slipping away. In this episode, we'll go beyond the headlines. We'll talk about the decision Bernhard made, the emotions he felt, and the sleepless nights that ultimately shaped who he is today. A mentor, investor, and a loving family man. If you're a student, a dreamer, or someone standing at the edge of your own next big leap, this conversation with Bernhard might just change the way you think about success and about yourself. Thank you for being my guest today, Bernhard.
Thanks a lot for the invitation. Great to be here.
Great to have you here. And Bernhard, before we dive into your personal journey, could you give us a quick intro into Busuu for those who might not be familiar yet with your company? And what exactly does this platform do? And what made it stand out against so many competitors?
Yeah, so Busuu is an online language learning platform where you can learn, I think, now up to 16 different languages. And I think the USP of Busuu still until today is the community element. So when we started it originally, I've learned 4 languages in my life, and I always felt that the best way to learn a language is full immersion. The idea that you're going to be directly exposed to native speakers, and that helps you to practice the skills in real life. But with traditional ways like books or CD-ROMs at the time, that wasn't really possible. So we felt that the idea of a social network for language learning would make a lot of sense, where you are able to learn a language from another native speaker in the same way you can actually teach your own mother tongue to someone else. And that also has the benefit outside of just, practicing the skills that you learn, that you also lose the fear of making mistakes. Because we're all afraid of making mistakes when we speak other languages. That's actually a big reason why people don't learn the language properly. But if you see other people making mistakes in your own mother tongue, you actually realize that everyone is having the same problem. We're all on the same playing field, and therefore you don't need to be afraid. Just go for it and practice, and that keeps users motivated.
I totally agree with that, because I remember still being like afraid of speaking the English language.
Yeah.
because I had one teacher at school who wasn't like the best mentor for me. Even though I started to trying out the oral matura in English,
Oh,
she didn't give me the feedback. She gave me the feedback. Yeah, maybe you shouldn't do.
oh,
Um, it did something with me.
yeah, for sure. It erodes your confidence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I enrolled at the E&I specialization at the WU. I still remembers the words of Nicolas Franke, who told all of us students, if I hear any one of you laughing about someone else speaking not the best English,
Mm.
you won't be studying here anymore.
Oh, wow, that's great.
And
Great
this gave me
incentive.
such a
Yeah.
confidence to just make mistakes. And this is how I learned like
Yeah.
really proper English. So I totally agree with your
English is perfect.
So thank you very much. And it feels also like this problem that you were solving felt pretty personal. Like you spoke 4 languages.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I always had a passion for learning languages. In fact, actually, when I studied here at VU, I think the subject I liked the most was learning Spanish. I completely fell into that. I actually did like a summer course in Malaga in Spain, fell in love with the culture and the language. And I just loved acquiring this language, and it opened up another door. And when I decided to go for an exchange semester, I went to Buenos Aires in Argentina, so kind of the furthest possible way. And yeah, I just became quite fluent in Spanish. I then traveled after my studies in Argentina for like 4 months with a backpack. And I think I only survived the trip because I was able to communicate in Spanish. I then did an internship of the Austrian Chamber of Commerce in Sao Paulo and learned Portuguese actually quite fast. And again, learning another language opens another door into another culture. It helps you to really connect with other people. And I just loved that as an activity. And that's why it was great when I met my co-founder and we came up with this idea of Busuu.
It's amazing. And how did this process fell?
Well, I after studying at VU, I then went into strategy consulting. I started with Roland Berger. I felt it's a great place to go after university, especially if you have no idea what to do in your life, which was my case. I love the fact that you're gonna jump into different projects and deal with different industries and different problems. But equally, I got a bit frustrated by just recommending other people what to do rather than doing it myself. I think I always, since my early childhood, I like to, solve problems, organize trips, organize parties. I was probably, to a certain extent, quite entrepreneurial. But as a strategy consultant, when your main product is PowerPoint slides that you then present and then hope that the client is going to do something with it, I felt a bit like, look, actually, I'm really interested to see what happened at the end. And we normally took a plane and flew to the next client to solve the next issue. And that's why I felt, 2 years was for me enough to stay there. I then applied for a sponsorship with IE Business School in Madrid, which was very much focused on entrepreneurship. And I received a scholarship there, which allowed me to actually finance it for myself. And yeah, the school had various programs and projects where you could jump into entrepreneurial topics, but I didn't really find the one. I had many different ideas, but nothing really clicked until the day when I went into a networking event where people with ideas were looking for a team, and people were looking for ideas. So I randomly sat next on a bench to a guy I hadn't really spoken before during my MBA, and it turned out he was from Liechtenstein, so we both spoke German. And he told me about this idea that he had worked on with a group for learning languages online, and he was now looking for a team member because all these other team members had left. And I told him, look, I mean, I love learning languages. This is actually one of the subjects I enjoy the most. I love exploring other cultures. And we immediately clicked, and then we went for coffee afterwards, and we kind of hit it off from there.
That sounds like a perfect match.
It was a perfect match, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, his name is Adrian. We then built the company. We first did the business plan because his first project was going in a slightly different direction. It was also called lingling.ly. So my first recommendation was to change the name because it sounded like a Chinese restaurant. And he was, coming from quite a technical background. He was more like I think he studied computer science. And he was looking for a partner with a bit more, I guess, marketing, product, entrepreneurial skills, and therefore we were really the perfect match. And because I was also a consultant, I knew how to draw slides and information very well. And so I was drawing the first wireframes of Busuu while he was coding it into the platform. And we did the business plan during the last 6 months of the MBA. And right after graduation, we founded the business.
Oh, awesome. And what was your strategy at the beginning?
I think the first strategy, because we were one of the pioneers for online language learning. So there were a myriad of people who told us it's a crazy idea. I mean, no one will ever learn a language online, because at that time there was nothing like that. I think the main competitor was Rosetta Stone, which I don't know whether you might be too young to remember, but it was a company who was selling yellow CD-ROMs at an airport for $1,000, for example, per language. And so we felt, well, it's super outdated. And also Facebook was coming into Europe at the time. So that's why we came also with this inspiration. Why don't we combine the idea of a social network with the activity of learning a language? So the strategy was that for the first year or so, we would do so-called freemium business model, where we actually gave the product away for free, I think for the first year, just to understand a bit more what type of features people like. And, I was still doing customer service, and whenever tickets came in and said, why don't you have grammar units? Why don't you have speech recognition, or whatever it might be? Then I was collecting this information, and then we started to build certain features. And after a year, then we started to monetize for roughly, I think, $9 and euros a month.
Great. So you build your first customer base. You also got the feedback on board.
Exactly. Yeah. So it was also a website first, because the iPhone had been launched, but not the App Store yet. So people had iPhones, but you couldn't really have many apps or no apps other than the ones from Apple.
And I remember at that time everyone was in the BlackBerry hype.
Exactly. Yeah, I was still with my BlackBerry, and so slowly, we migrated to iPhones, and that's why we built everything on the web platform. We also had Flash technologies. We had some animations, because we were incredibly gamified. So we realized very early on that the best part in language learning is actually a highly gamified way of learning. So we had like trees that would represent the language that you would learn. The more you would learn, the tree would grow. If you didn't grow, the tree would shrink and send you messages. We had Busuu berries, which was our internal currency. It was a highly gamified way of learning languages. But then we realized that now that, with the launch of the iPhone and the App Store, this is going to disrupt dramatically web businesses. And we actually started to launch a so-called companion app, where you had basically a mobile app that would be a companion to the website experience. That was the first way of how many companies started with a mobile experience. But then the trend went on, and it became clear that mobile needs to be our core platform. So that's why we actually had to shift our entire content, everything we had built for a screen like this, we had to then build on a screen like that, with like 15 different Android devices and different screen sizes and so on. So it literally to reinvent and rebuild the business when we were already like 2 or 3 years in.
How much of this web application could you actually use for the mobile application?
Very little. I think, there was some backend infrastructure, there was some audio files, the whole, I guess, core structure as such. But in reality, it meant that we had to reinvent the company, which really slowed us down. And we had this massive technical debt. We were also built on an open source platform called Drupal. Well, we had already, I think at that time, a couple of million users, and it's like a bit like a WordPress. And everything started to explode. We had bugs everywhere. So it was very painful. And the entire replatforming process, from getting from web to mobile first, took us 2 years. During which we hardly could launch new features, and started to have quite a few issues.
Yeah, I guess financial issues as well.
Yeah, no, that was the time. I mean, we started in 2008, where we basically launched shortly before the start of the financial crisis. So Lehman Brothers then collapsed in September 2008. So we also realized that we couldn't really raise any money, so no one wanted to invest into us. So we had to bootstrap for about 2 years. So no salaries, very low flame in terms of cost, very small team, 3 or 4 people at the time in Madrid, because we started the business just there. And then we raised our first round of external investment, which was coming from Hansi Hansmann, Johann Hansmann, quite a known business angel in the Austrian ecosystem right now, which was a guy I met during the Austrian club at a hike in Madrid. We went for a hike and I showed him on my BlackBerry. Every time when someone bought a premium membership, I got a ping, and there were a lot of pings during this hike, and he was quite impressed by that. And then we went for a lunch afterwards, and we had a handshake deal, and he invested a couple of 100,000 euros into the business, and he was our first business angel. We then raised from another angel in Spain called Martin Wasowski, and then we realized that Spain is no longer the best place to really have a high growing startup, especially as we wanted to go more into a mobile direction, and there were very few iOS developers at the time or Android developers. So we then moved actually the entire business. We were about 10, 11 people over to London with a moving van and 200 moving boxes. It was again a big disruption to the business, but I think it was the right choice. Because London really at that time, and probably still is, the best center in Europe probably to have a startup. It was a great technological ecosystem, lots of talent that we could hire, because also at that time you didn't really have remote work, you didn't really hire people from all over the world, so people were sitting in the office. So hence in the year 2012, we then moved over everyone and started to build the shop there again.
So best advice, how to find an investor, go hiking.
Yeah, I mean,
Inspired.
it definitely helped. And look, I mean, I think he was also very happy to have invested into Busuu, but he was more than an investor. I mean, he's a great friend of mine. He was my mentor. I also really made sure that he worked for his money. So I really used him in the whole process at start. He helped me with the interview process for senior talent, and I sent him my business plans. I really involved him also in growing the business.
What do you think has sparked his interest in you at the beginning?
I mean, I would guess it was us as the people. Like, he really liked both of us, Adrian and myself. I think that's how he invests still today. He mainly backs people. And then, of course, he had also an interest in language learning, and he saw the big potential. This was not a small micro idea. This was something that really could disrupt the world, because, again, at that time, there was nothing out there. It also, let's face it, at that time, he invested into nightclubs and hairdressing salons, he had a couple of restaurants. So it was his first startup. So he really learned startup performance marketing, how to build online products. He learned it with us. And that, at the end, I think he has now invested in over 50 or 60 companies, has led to the entire success, obviously, of what he did afterwards. So I think he saw something cool that he could now put himself into, and he has done an amazing success story out of that.
Yeah, I totally agree. And how difficult was the process of moving the company? Were there any barriers, like also from your employees? Hey, I don't want to go to.
Interesting, only one person decided to stay in Spain, because also Spain at that time was really a difficult market. It was mass unemployment, demonstrations, strikes on the streets. It felt really not like a great place to have a fast-growing company. That's why the people just jumped on the opportunity. And we had also a very international team. And honestly, I haven't heard of anyone who regretted that choice, because all of them, none of them stayed until the very end, the exits. Some people stayed, different lengths, but they all massively expanded their career horizon and their opportunities. They moved on to other companies. So again, maybe as one key learning, when you're being offered such an opportunity to go with your current employer into another, top town of startups, the Champions League of startups, then just follow on, because they really, I think, expanded their careers as well.
And how did the success story unfold for everyone?
Well, I mean, until the very end, or in the years after our move.
First years in the UK.
Yeah, I think the first years in UK were very difficult, because, to your question, it was a massive disruption to move the entire team and the entire business, because people had to suddenly look for a house and to figure out how to get to the office, and we needed to find new offices. So it took us quite some time to kind of settle into a new place. And then, because we raised, as part of that move, also some money from a UK investor, from a venture capitalist, Brent Hoberman, who's the founder of lastminute.com, was one of the partners there. So he also opened up a lot of doors, because he's a very renowned figure in the UK tech ecosystem. So we got, I think at that time we raised about 3.5 million euros. And we've started to hire too fast. We did the classical mistake of getting the money in the bank and just, we hired a recruitment agency and started to extend the offers and grew from 10 to 50 people within a couple of weeks, months. And that was, I think, a big mistake because, there was no culture fit. There was a lot of misalignment because also some of these people, thought, they would be working on mobile, but we were still stuck in our mobile migration. So then they realized we need to actually change now, and they need to work on the legacy code. Was a lot of issues with that. And because we couldn't launch new features, the revenues started to decline. Also, a new competitor came onto the landscape. Duolingo launched, I think, in the year 2011, 2012. So we started to feel them because they raised a lot of money and gave the product away for free. And we were still trying to monetize on our platform. They came highly gamified because they looked at what we were doing and others were doing.
They already started directly as a web.
As a mobile product, absolutely. And so it was hard for us to compete with that. And that's where we got a bit stuck in the mud during that time. And there was one fundraising that then fell through, unfortunately, a couple of weeks before closing because an investor changed mind, and then we were to a certain extent running out of cash, and so we had to let go of about 10 people. And it was a difficult moment. We were sad, like 50, had to let go of 10. But because also there was no real cultural alignment in the team, more people started to decide that they want to leave. There was a lot of toxicity. There were a couple of people who were quite angry about the whole situation. And so people started to leave. And that really spread a bit like a wildfire. And unfortunately, I made the mistake of not getting people directly out of the business once you have made them redundant, but I let them work their notice. And then, people went for lunch. And when they came back, another 5 people decided to resign. And then I let these people work their notice. And then they went for lunch tomorrow with other 20 people or 10 people. And another 3 of them handed in the resignation letter. So we had an additional 30 people who resigned during that time. So we went basically from 50 to 40 and from 40 to 10 within a couple of weeks, like a mass walkout.
And how did you manage to don't lose hope during that time? Because new competitor, 30 people leaving, struggles with finance.
It was very tough. I do remember this was very, very difficult moments in my life. One big highlight at that time was the birth of my daughter, who is also sitting here in the studio room with me. She was born during the time, and I came home and I saw her and could cuddle with her, and she was smiling and didn't know anything about what was going on behind the scenes, and that really helped me, I think, to I don't know, have some sunshine in my life during that time. But the positive side benefit for me also, or for the company, was that because so many people had walked out, that we suddenly became cash flow positive. So rather than running out of cash, we turned cash flow positive because all these people had left. So we were no longer drowning. We were kind of stable. And the crazy thing is really that with a couple of more months, we then started to release the version of the mobile app that we had been working for so long. It was literally like the last call we had in the train we put in, and we drove out of this black tunnel where we had been in for so many years. And suddenly the numbers started to pick up. We got an inbound request from a potential investor, McGraw Hill Education, who somehow found us. I actually met them at a conference. We got along quite well, and then they decided to put 6 million euros into the business. So we closed the 6 million euro round, and we're again kind of the heroes of the startups and the language learning scene at that time, even though it was a near bankruptcy a couple of months before, which I think again is a great reminder of how the line between success and failure in the startup world is so thin.
It's so thin.
Yeah.
This is crazy. And you talked a lot about culture, and most companies actually do about culture, but you told me how important it is, and later on you probably learned out of these mistakes.
Yeah.
So tell me, what kind of a role does culture plays
Yeah.
in your company?
So I remember when I was sitting in this dark big office where everyone had left, and literally saw the work of the last 7 years fall apart in front of me. I swore to myself, if I have the chance to do this again, I will do this as a culture first business, because I really believed we had a cultural problem in the organization, but definitely I was a big part of that problem as well, because people were angry with me and walked out and so on. So I said, if I have a chance, if I can roll this dice again, I will do it culture first. And at that time, there was a lot of talk about how Airbnbs, for example, doing their culture. This famous article of Brian Chesky about "Don't fuck up the culture." So I started to research a bit more about it, and we hired actually an external consultant who helped us to really think through that. And first and foremost, decide the core values of the business, which are still the core values of today, the so-called teach values: trust, effectiveness, ambition, curiosity, and happiness. Those were the main values of Busuu that were also very close to my heart. And I think it's important as a founder that you set these values for yourself, because it needs to be values that you kind of feel close to in your life, not just in business, but something that you take close to your heart as well. And then we worked with the team also over the years to define the so-called actionable behaviors. So because I always say, culture is values times behavior, or you can say culture is what people do when no one is looking. So it's basically the idea, people take thousands of micro decisions every day, how they behave according to the values. And the values are normally this abstract thing that you have next to the ping pong table, but it doesn't mean anything. Therefore, you need to operationalize them in so-called behaviors. Behaviors, for example, deliver on your promise would be a behavior for trust, or become the best version of yourself would be a behavior for curiosity, or celebrate the team would be a behavior for happiness, for example. So under each of these 5 core values, we had 3 behaviors that kind of explained what we actually mean by that. And when we say deliver on your promise, and you say you're going to release a version of the mobile app on Tuesday, then you better release a version on Tuesday. And of course, if there's unforeseen challenges, fair enough. But still, we had ambition as a core value. We really wanted people to go the extra mile. So we expected people also to work hard and drive themselves in order to deliver on their promises, but also working together as a team and celebrate the team. So it was all pretty much, thought through of how this, and lots of thought and work went into that, also together with the team and consultants and so on, to really refine it. And that allowed us, I think, to create a machine that really helped us to scale from that then 10 people up to the 200 people when we eventually then sold the business. Because we operationalized these values in the entire life cycle of the employees. So when we drafted the job spec for a new job offer, we would think through the values. And when we were doing interview processes, we had specific interview questions around the core behaviors. So, tell me a project from the past where you delivered on the promise, or you didn't deliver on your promise, for example. Or if you become the best version of yourself, what are you currently working on outside of your job, for example? Do you have any other passion projects for yourself? Bring your passion was another one, for example, that we had. So we really screened people accordingly to this. And if it wasn't clear thumbs up, we would not make an offer. We had a 3 months probation period, or 6 months for senior staff, where after this, if not the entire team was thumbs up, we would not pass probation.
Oh, wow.
It was quite tough, because at times we had a third or sometimes even more who would not pass probation. But it's also so much more expensive to fire people afterwards than fire them immediately if it just doesn't work out. And often people know themselves that the culture fit is not there, and you somehow release them, and they're happier if they actually, this is not the place for me, because we were very fast-driven, high-performance team. I strongly believe a company is not a family. A company is a high-performance team, and thereby you need to sometimes take also difficult decisions to make sure that the team actually scores and the team wins at the end. We also, during performance reviews, people would need to rate themselves according to the values and give examples of how they behaved according to the behaviors. And, this would be also evaluated by the managers, 360-degree feedback. So we build an entire system around this. And if consistently, people were not really adhering to values, they would leave the organization. And so with that, I think it was, some people call it a cult, but I think there's also nothing necessarily wrong with that if it's in a positive way. And, we had an amazing culture that probably in the years of 2015, 16 up to 2018, we were one of the incredibly coherent, amazing places to work. Like, you would get applications from all sorts of top companies around UK and other countries, because Busuu was really seen as a reference of a company where, we were fast moving, really achieving something, but had a great culture. We had also fun. I mean, we took the entire company to an island in Croatia and partied for two nights and days. Like, it was always I think a good balance, but we did require people to try, which is one of my favorite behaviors, become the best version of themselves. I think if you come to, because I always believe you spend probably 80% of your wake time in a job. So if you are not really motivated and you're kind of pissed off and you don't like your colleagues and your boss, like, why do you waste your time?
I agree.
So therefore, if you're already there, if you already spend all this time in a job, then rather make sure that you actually become the best version. You learn as much as you can. And that was really what we were trying to push, but we attracted people who were this type of learning machines. And, we have now employees or ex-employees. They have, after the exit, founded businesses. They work as senior employees now at Meta, Google, you name it. So people have really made fantastic careers, and they always point back to the founding years that they had at Busuu.
So how does it feel for you that you have inspired so many people?
I'm very proud of that. I think that's probably one of the things I'm most proud. And I'm even in touch with some employees or ex-employees, and they still tell me that the values are there and they try, even though obviously they're now owned by another organization. They have a fantastic culture, so it makes me proud. I think we did lots of things. I did lots of things wrong, of course. But I think with regards to culture and how we implemented it, I think we did really well.
Do you think it is one of the most important parts a business has to do right in order to get successful?
I mean, Peter Drucker said that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And he said this, I think, in the 50s or so. So I believe it's true. I mean, um, there are obviously examples of very successful startups with a horrible culture. And maybe, in some industries where it's really hard. I mean, Uber, for example, it was not renowned in the early days for having an amazing culture, because they had to fight themselves against the taxi industries, like fierce competition in difficult regulatory markets. If you go in there with, like, let's say, a nice culture and, everyone can take unlimited holidays and stuff like that, you will not survive. But again, also, I think great culture does not necessarily mean just benefits and free food and flex work time. I think great culture, especially if you define it well, in our case, like a high performing culture, means also you will attract high performing team members, and they will strive and they will love it. And the others who just want to have a 9 to 5 jobs, they should probably not come, and they are better off in another place.
Yeah, it also feels awesome when you know that your other teammates have your back.
Yeah. No, and absolutely. And we, at a certain point, used referrals from employees as the main source of basically new colleagues. And that we had like a very, I think, attractive bonus scheme. We paid, I think, 3,000 euros or something if people passed probation that came through a referral, because great people know great people. They recommended other top engineers that loved kind of the drive that we had. They came, they enjoyed it. They wouldn't recommend someone who is like a bit like, I work as little as possible. So I think it just we became a talent magnet, and that was just a fantastic feeling.
That's a very good strategy.
Yeah.
And you went on to becoming one of the largest exits in Austria,
Mm-hmm.
with over 350 million euros. Had you had this goal already in mind to sell the company? Or what was the journey from, oh my gosh, we're thriving under culture, we're generating so much revenue right now? How did you feel, like IPO, selling?
I mean, obviously, we went through phases. In the 15 years, there were all sorts of luckily failed acquisition processes, offers, discussions that we had during these times. And the reality is, once you raise external money, from venture capitalists, from business angels, you're kind of bound to create some sort of liquidity event at the end. I mean, these people, and I now invest myself, it's not meant as a giveaway. You expect some sort of return. Hence, you need to put the business into the best track for some sort of liquidity event. Then again, the best businesses are being bought and not being sold. So I think especially we had the luck that during COVID we got a massive acceleration of the business. So people were locked up at home and were either baking bread or learning languages. So we could literally track the lockdowns per country based on our download stats. It was insane. Whenever Italy went into hard lockdown, Italian revenues went through the roof. So we had a boost as opposed to many other businesses, fantastic businesses that really suffered during COVID. And so already the business we executed, I think, well as well during COVID, really in terms of remote work, of how we launched products and so on. And we acquired a business just before COVID that had tutors. So we had suddenly over 10,000 tutors that also helped us to really complement the whole product offering. Our B2B revenue started to grow. So the business was in a good shape. And again, during the years, we had all sorts of acquisition offers, discussions. And then at that specific time when COVID was starting to end, we got approached by a strategic acquirer who told us, who we've known for years, that they looked through the entire market and they have decided and found that Busuu is the best product for learning languages, and they would like to acquire us, and they would like to do that in a lean and efficient way. And my learning is whenever a big corporate says lean and efficient, then probably all the alarm bells should go on, because it was the total opposite of that. It was a very draining, I think 6 months long process with over 100 people in the due diligence process on their end. We only had 150 employees at that time. It was like a really, really tough. I think I worked 12, 14, 16 hours a day. I was just locked up in a data room, just trying to answer all these questions that we were shot at. And unfortunately, this acquirer, even though we passed everything with flying flags, still couldn't come to a conclusion because they had their own issues, actually. So we slipped out of exclusivity, and during this time we were able to drum up new acquirers. And during that moment, Jack, which I had a relationship already from the past, took the initiative, and we said, okay, let's see whether we could come together. And basically they were able to make an even better offer, and we went with them. And as we already had the best data room in the world, we went through the DD quite easily, and 6 weeks later we then closed the deal.
Just 6 weeks.
Yeah, so that went incredibly fast. It was a gamble because we had actually this other acquirer who was then ready to close, but we said, we're sorry, we're now going with someone else. But we decided then to go with Jack. And we felt at that time that also they were looking to complement their offerings with language learning. So for us it seemed like a perfect match, also as they had a very strong presence in the US. They're basically an American company. We wanted to expand more into the US, so into the US it sounded like a preferred partnership. Yeah.
And how did it feel selling Busuu at the time?
So maybe answering the question from before, I knew that this will happen at a certain point. Even if you do an IPO, and we were at a certain point thinking about going for an IPO, but then the offer was just too good not to take it. And luckily, to be honest, I took it, because also then markets changed, and there were more turmoils afterwards. So I feel very fortunate and lucky also with regards to the timings, because we sold for over 10 times revenues, and these days you're happy to sell for 10 times EBITDA or profit. So we had a fantastic outcome also for employees. We had a big stock option scheme. The investors were incredibly happy, including Hansi. So it was a fantastic deal. So I knew this will come at a certain point. But of course, it's the end of an era. I was Mr. Busuu for over 15 years. My entire identity was around this company wherever I went. I then stayed on for like a year and a half as part of my agreement. I really wanted to make sure that the business is in a good shape. And I hear, and also has been published recently in the earnings call from Jack, that Busuu is really performing well, which I'm very proud of. But yeah, for me, it was then time at a certain point to move on. And that's okay. I mean, there's different phases in life. Equally, I think 15 years is a good stretch. Not many people have done this in one company. So I felt very proud of what we have achieved as a team. Obviously, also a little bit sad that my baby is now independent and had to leave and is now on its own way. But I also felt probably curious and excited of what's coming next.
Do you think the acquisition was the peak of your career?
I think that that would be sad because it's a bit like saying that whenever Rafa Nadal hands in or retires from tennis, that would be the peak of his career when he hands in the tennis racket. I think the peak of the career is when you operate well, when you're in the trenches, you're with the team, you're working on the challenges, then you're at the peak. So I would say if I will be hit by the bus, hopefully not tomorrow, I would rather say my peak was the really good execution prior to the exit rather than the exit itself. Of course, it's an incredible moment, and we are, as mentioned, all very happy about that. But actually, what I currently miss, because I do more like angel investing right now and work on different projects, I actually miss this time of being together with one team, one mission, like very laser focused. And I think that is the essence of entrepreneurship. It's not when you hand over the keys and get some money in return.
Do you think you will ever get active with a new idea?
I would love to. I think we're living right now in incredibly exciting times with AI. I think so much is going to change, and I think we're just literally scratching the surface at the moment. And not many people don't yet realize. I'm not an expert yet, but whatever I learn, it's just fascinating and also frightening at a certain point. What is coming? And always these type of paradigm shifts create massive opportunities. So I think, there's definitely not a lack of problems in the world, especially, I mean, type of issues we're currently seeing politically and in with democracies and so on. So I would love to get active at a certain point again. Right now, I equally enjoy family time, spending time with my kids, having this freedom that I don't need to justify to anyone what I do, and can do my travels and trips, and I enjoy this space. It has been now 2 years. But I slowly, I think I get my itchy feet, and at a certain point, I think I want to go back. Whether it's full time again as a CEO, the 80 hours a week, not so sure.
Mm.
But maybe it's supporting a younger CEO, someone who still wants to really push it and help them with a bit of support from the sidelines.
And like you mentioned, 80 hours a week. Do you think many entrepreneurs underestimate how much time they actually have to put in into making it work?
Yes, but those that normally don't stay that long as entrepreneurs. So I think there's a kind of natural self-selection that if you really think you can build this meaningful big business, look, you can build amazing businesses. And right now, with the help of AIs, I mean, there's all this talk about the one-person billion-dollar company where you have all your AI agents. But again, competition will come, and there will be some who works 80 hours and the others who will work 60 hours. It's also not only about the hours; it's about the combination of working smart and hard, but it's not only working smart. I've never met any single successful entrepreneurs, meaningful successful entrepreneur who just worked from 9 to 5. It just doesn't work because, especially in the early days, you need to go the extra mile. You need to really drive hard, but also working smart. And I think now, as I said, like with AI, I think there's huge opportunities. But if people, want to enjoy life, this work-life balance, I mean, work is an important part of life. So I think ideally you're having a blast, and I was having a blast. I didn't see it as an issue doing on a Sunday afternoon some emails or working on a presentation. I actually really enjoyed it. So you need to be of a certain character, I think, to do that. If you don't like that, you can still build good lifestyle businesses, but don't expect like the massive maybe financial outcome or like having hundreds of employees or 100 millions of users. That's probably going to be complicated.
And how did you manage yourself during the time? Because you talked a lot about culture,
Mm.
but how did you manage your own culture?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you really truly enjoy what you do and you have this passion, then I think, as said, it doesn't feel like so hard. Obviously, there were tough moments, And during these moments, I just try to take care of myself, like spend time with the family, do a lot of sports. Uh, also, maybe at moments where I was a bit tired, look at employees where I can basically, I call them the tent poles, people that I can kind of hold on to for a bit, because I had amazing, head of products and CTOs. My co-founder had left already, roughly 2 or 3 years into the journey. He then decided to move out, so I was single founder, CEO. I didn't have a co-founder, let's say, operationally involved. He was a shareholder, but not in the business. So, I needed other people to work with. For example, I had also fantastic mentors like Hansi, another guy, Andrew Wade, who sold LinkedIn, Linda to LinkedIn for over $1 billion, and we had like weekly chats. That really helped me. And then I did something that I can strongly recommend, which comes from this YPO forum, this idea of a peer group where you exchange yourself a bit like in a CEO founder group therapy. We were about 8 founders, and we were meeting up every 6 weeks. And religiously, you are not allowed to fail. You had only 2 misses per year, otherwise you would be kicked out of the group. And you would discuss core challenges of each of the members together. And people would not give recommendations, but rather a certain way of like sharing their own experiences that they had. And that was for me a life changer. I would not have survived all this journey without this group. And I think that is something also in Austria, probably we need to do a little bit more openly sharing, because to the outside it sounds shiny and great, but behind the scenes a lot of difficult stuff going on. And that's why it's important to know that and recognize that and lift each other up.
Yeah, a friend of mine who's just been to the US for 2 weeks. She came back and she was like, I felt so free. Everyone was like trying to help you.
Yeah.
They're trying for your feedback, and there was such a huge community, and
Yeah.
she built it within like 1 week already.
Yeah.
And in Austria, obviously, you have a lot of institutions trying to build those communities, but it's still within the society in Austria, it's still not a dream path to follow.
No, I think we somehow rather see the negatives.
Yeah.
There's a bit of an element, I think, of jealousy, and rather seeing the downsides than the upside. But again, there are amazing entrepreneurs in Austria. I'm now also on the board of Austrian startups, and it's incredible to see also how far the ecosystem has come. We were thinking about moving potentially to Vienna, but then moved to London. I decided against Vienna at the time. I would love to have more progress in Austria as well, but there's a cultural mind shift needed. But we can complain about it, or we can actually do something about it. And that's why I think it's really the role also for us to inspire young entrepreneurs. Is the reason I do this podcast, to really inspire people who are now 10 years, 15 years younger than myself, and like thinking of, should I do it or should I not? And of course they should, because the crazy thing is that in Austria, with such a strong social system, the downside risks of failing are close to nil. I mean, you're not going to live on the street if you now, did one startup and fail and maybe lose a little bit of money. There's still, healthcare is for free, and, there will be some sort of social security network around you. So actually, the real risk is very limited. But strangely enough, people don't take the risk because they're kind of more, I think, it's too convenient to just stay in the status quo, which is a bit of it's an ironic situation, and it shouldn't be like that. And so that's why I would just encourage more people to just go out and take risk, because the downside is very limited.
Why have you taken the risk back then?
I think I'm a big risk taker in general. Like, I always love to, I don't know, also in sports, or I'd rather see the glass half full than empty. And I didn't really understand why I should not do that. Obviously, there were the luck I, could financially sustain myself, because I had worked hard before in consulting, so I had the salary or the savings. My co-founder had some family money, so they could finance a little bit the early years, but I didn't understand, why would I not do that? And in fact, I remember I got an offer from McKinsey, and I was like, of course I would not go to McKinsey. I'd rather work for nearly nothing in my own startup, because this is so much cooler, and we can actually change the world, and try it out ourselves, because what I really love about entrepreneurship is also you're in charge of your own path. You cannot blame anyone else. Like, it's you who creates the success, it's you who creates the failure, obviously together with the team. But the ultimate responsibility as founder, CEO really lies with you. And I love that freedom. I would be unemployable. I could not work in another company, and obviously I will never. But I think that is important to recognize for yourself. If there's this type of character that doesn't really fit in, it doesn't, maybe has a bit of an authority problem or complex, then maybe it's a good thing to try it out. What's the worst that can happen? Nothing, and you will learn at all.
And what characteristics do you think founders need these days?
Well, I think they need probably the same, like in the early days. When I invest in founders, I always look for the 3 Ps, which is passion. So I think you need to really burn inside for the project you're working on. So you told me before about your own project, about art. I hope you have a strong passion for art,
Yeah.
because if you don't have that and you just do it because you see a business opportunity, it's going to be so hard, the journey, that most likely you're going to give up.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, is incredibly important. You need to have this passion. The next one is positivity. I think in general, what I see also among my portfolio companies, the founders who are just a bit more on the sunny side of life, who, they just see things a bit more positive. They see an opportunity where other people see problems. They're more successful. Because again, like the essence of entrepreneurship is resolving challenges. And by the way, they will never end. If you think the challenges is going to end because you get a new fundraise, or you hired a world-class CTO, or whatever, it's not.
That's where the fun begins.
That's actually where the fun starts. The problems will just turn bigger, and there will be more challenges because the CTO will, by the way, resign, or is not a culture fit, and by the way, whatever fundraising might fall through, or whatever it might be. There's constant stream of, or you need to spend it now and hire faster. Like, it's a constant stream of challenges. It will never ever stop. And therefore, you need to have this mindset of like pure positivity, that whatever comes thrown your way, you take this, you embrace the challenge, you embrace the struggle, and enjoy the ride. And then the third, therefore, for me, that I look for, the third P, is perseverance, is this kind of never giving up. Or obviously, they say, if you sit in a hole, don't stick deeper. But still, we always felt, and we had, so many moments where we felt this is not going to work. But the big belief that the language learning market is big enough. People will always learn languages, even now with AI. So there is a way for creating a business that can do 40, 50, 100 million in revenues. And, we did at that time over 40 million. So we've shown that it's growing. So there is a space for us in this place. And that's why I just had this belief, and that's why I didn't give up. And I think this perseverance is very important. And you learn this in these early days. I love working with endurance sports people, people who run marathons or triathlons or Ironmans, or people who just have this perseverance in themselves. People who were fed with the silver spoon, or where everything was easy in their life, they're normally also not necessarily the best entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I think you get also a lot from your own childhood.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And, in my case, I was always very good at school, but somehow I always needed to prove that I can be better. And it was never good enough. I always had a bit of this chip on the shoulder.
Yeah.
And, that made me trying to constantly not give up and become the better version of myself.
Were you also a perfectionist?
Yeah, absolutely. Which is not a good trait as an entrepreneur. Especially if it's then combined with micromanagement, because then you can drive a lot of people crazy. But I do like the idea of, go the extra mile and deliver the best that you can, because that's again where you grow professionally, not just handing in whatever presentation, but really try the best.
Yeah.
And that will make you grow.
Yeah. Whatever you try to do the best of your abilities.
Exactly. Yeah.
And if you would like to be remembered for one thing, what would it be?
I think this idea of inspiring other people to become the best version of themselves. I think that is something that I would love to be remembered for. I loved it in the process of language learning because actually this is also a lot of like personal development. When you now learn another language, you also understand so much more about your own language and your own culture. So you do actually become a better version of yourself. And I don't know whether the next journey is going to be again in education. It could be because I love the sector and there's lots to be done. But ideally, yes, I would love to be remembered for inspiring other potential entrepreneurs to become the best version of themselves.
I think you're on the best path to do so. I mean, along with your exit, you inspired so many people. I still remember like reading the articles about a huge exit a few years ago, and it inspires the hell out of you.
Glad to hear.
And then also listening to all these stories, how you also mentored the employees that you had, and how they also became successful founders afterward.
Yeah.
I think that's something to be proud of.
Yeah. Hopefully, there's more to come.
Thank you very much for being my guest.
Was a
Very
pleasure.
inspiring journey. And yeah, wish you all the best on your journey and yeah, lots of success.
Thank you very much. It's a great interview. Thank you.